The sky turned black as ink over the Nebraska prairie, as Lily Vale watched helpless from her family's wagon, the tornado bearing down on them with the fury of 1,000 devils. Her father's desperate plea, "Run, Lily," was the last word she would ever hear from him, a command that saved her life but condemned her to a solitude she never imagined possible in the vastness of the frontier. Spring of 1871 had promised new beginnings. The Vale family had left their meager existence in Ohio for the promise of free land under the Homestead Act. Thomas Vale, Lily's father, had dreams of building a cattle ranch that would secure their future. Her mother, Martha, had packed their wagon with what few possessions they could bring, including the family Bible and the silver locket that now hung around Lily's neck, the only tangible reminder that she once belonged to someone. Lily's younger brother Samuel had complained about the journey the entire way, until the day the storm came. Now, Lily would give anything to hear his voice again. The memory of that moment 1 week prior still made Lily's body tremble as she trudged across the prairie, her boots worn through, her dress torn and dirty. She had been searching for her family for days, clinging to a desperate hope that somehow they had survived being swept away by the merciless funnel cloud. But deep down, she knew the truth. The storm had taken everything: her family, their wagon, their supplies, their future. Her legs finally gave out beneath her as the sun began to set on the 7th day since the storm. At 20 years old, Lily had always prided herself on her strength and determination, but now she had nothing left. The spring night would be cold and she had no shelter, no food, and no water. As darkness fell around her, she closed her eyes, wondering if perhaps this was God's plan all along to reunite her with her family in heaven. The sound of hoofbeats was so distant at first that Lily thought she might be dreaming. When they grew louder, she forced her eyes open, lifting her head just enough to see a silhouette approaching through the twilight, a man on horseback, his broad shoulders outlined against the darkening sky. Miss, are you alive?" The voice was deep, concerned, with a hint of a southern drawl. Lily tried to respond, but her parched throat produced only a raspy whisper. The man dismounted in one fluid motion, crossing to her side and kneeling. His face came into focus, weathered by sun and wind, but kind, with eyes the color of the summer sky and a beard that couldn't quite hide the strong line of his jaw. "My name's Rhett Nathans," he said, removing his canteen and bringing it to her lips. "Looks like you've had a rough time of it." Lily drank greedily, water spilling down her chin as she tried to take in too much at once. "Easy now," he cautioned, pulling the canteen back slightly. "Too much at once will make you sick." "My family," Lily managed to whisper after a moment. The tornado understanding dawned in Rhett's eyes. "The big one that came through last week." He looked around, as if expecting to see others nearby. "You've been out here alone all this time," Lily nodded weakly. Without hesitation, Rhett removed his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. "My ranch is about 2 miles from here. Can you ride?" When Lily attempted to stand, her legs buckled beneath her. Rhett caught her with strong arms, then lifted her as if she weighed nothing at all, placing her gently on his horse before mounting behind her. "I've got you," he said, his voice close to her ear as his arms encircled her to take the reins. "You're safe now." Lily wanted to protest, to tell him she needed to keep searching, but exhaustion claimed her, and she found herself leaning back against the solid warmth of his chest as the horse began to move. Her last conscious thought was that even if this stranger meant her harm, she no longer had the strength to fight it. When Lily awakened, she found herself in an unfamiliar bed, sunlight streaming through a window covered with simple muslin curtains. For one blissful moment, She forgot the tragedy that had befallen her. Then reality crashed back, bringing with it a wave of grief so powerful she curled into herself, a moan escaping her lips. The sound brought footsteps, and a woman appeared in the doorway, older, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun, but with the same kind eyes as the man who had found her. "You're awake," the woman said, approaching the bed with a cup of steaming liquid. "I'm Mrs. Harriet Nathans. My son Rhett brought you here yesterday evening." "Where is he?" Lily asked, her voice still rough. "Out with the cattle. He'll be back by sundown." Mrs. Nathans helped Lily sit up and press the cup into her hands. "It's just broth for now. Your stomach needs to take things slow after what you've been through." As the warm liquid brought life back to her body, Lily looked around the room. It was simple but clean, with a handmade quilt on the bed, a small dresser, and a wooden chair in the corner where a dress had been laid out. "Those were mine from years ago," Mrs. Nathans explained, following Lily's gaze. "They should fit well enough until we can see about getting you proper clothes." "You're very kind," Lily said, "but I can't stay. I need to find my family." Mrs. Nathans's face softened with sympathy. "Rhett told me about the tornado. He and some men rode out this morning to look in the direction you came from. If there's anyone to be found, they'll find them." The unspoken message in the woman's voice was clear. She didn't expect anyone to be found alive. Lily fought back tears as she nodded her understanding. "You rest today," Mrs. Nathans continued. "Tomorrow will be soon enough to make decisions." After the older woman left, Lily forced herself to eat the rest of the broth, then struggled out of bed. Her legs were still weak, but she managed to make it to the window. Outside stretched a vista of rolling prairie, dotted with cattle in the distance. A barn and several outbuildings clustered near the modest but well-built two-story house. It was a working ranch, clearly established for some years. Rhett Nathans returned as the sun dipped below the horizon, his tall frame silhouetted in the doorway when he came to see her. He'd cleaned up, his beard trimmed and his hair still damp, but his eyes carried a weight that told Lily everything before he spoke a word. "We found your wagon," he said gently, remaining in the doorway as if to give her space for the news he carried. "About 15 miles southeast, it was, torn apart pretty badly." "And my family?" Lily asked, though she already knew the answer. "We found 3 bodies. A man, a woman, and a boy." Rhett removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "I'm sorry, Miss Vale." Lily hadn't told him her surname. "You found identification, Bible pages scattered about, had a family record inside. Vale, it said." He paused, watching her carefully. "We brought them back. They deserve a proper Christian burial." The kindness in this simple statement broke through Lily's shock. Tears came in a flood as her legs gave way beneath her. In an instant, Rhett was across the room, catching her before she hit the floor and guiding her to sit on the edge of the bed. "I'm truly sorry," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We'll hold the service tomorrow if you feel strong enough. Pastor Willoughby has agreed to come out from town." Lily could only nod through her tears. When she finally found her voice, it emerged as a whisper. "Why are you helping me?" "You don't even know me." Rhett's expression showed surprise at the question. "Out here we help our neighbors. It's how we all survive." He stood, returning to a respectful distance. "My mother has supper waiting. Do you feel up to joining us, or would you prefer to eat here?" The thought of being alone with her grief was suddenly unbearable. "I'll come down," Lily said, wiping her tears. "Thank you, Mr. Nathans." "Rhett," he corrected gently. "Nobody calls me Mr. Nathans except the banker in town, and that's only when he's denying me a loan." The small attempt at levity brought the ghost of a smile to Lily's lips, surprising her. How could she smile at a time like this? Yet something about this man's presence made the crushing weight of her loss fractionally lighter, if only for a moment. The funeral was held the next day on a gentle rise behind the Nathans ranch house. Pastor Willoughby, a kind-faced man with spectacles perched on his nose, spoke of God's mysteries and the promise of reunion in heaven. Lily stood between Rhett and Mrs. Nathans, supported by their steady presence as her last blood relations were committed to the earth. Several ranch hands attended, standing respectfully with hats in hand, though they'd never known the Vale family. This simple act of community touched Lily deeply. In Ohio, they'd been poor tenant farmers, largely ignored by their more prosperous neighbors. Here, strangers had taken the time to honor her family's passing. After the service, Rhett showed her the 3 wooden crosses he had made, each carved with a name: Thomas Vale, Martha Vale, and Samuel Vale. He'd even burned the dates of birth that he'd found in the family Bible, leaving the death date the same for all: May 12, 1871. "It's fine work," Lily said, tracing her finger over her father's name. "I wish I could have done more," Rhett replied, his voice carrying genuine regret. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the prairie in gold and crimson, Lily finally asked the question that had been pressing on her mind. "What happens now?" Mrs. Nathans looked to her son before answering. "You're welcome to stay here as long as you need." "I can't impose. It's no imposition," Rhett interrupted. "We've got the room, and truth be told, Mother could use the help around the house." Mrs. Nathans gave her son a sharp look. "The girl just buried her family, Rhett. She doesn't need to be thinking about earning her keep." "No," Lily said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "He's right. I need to be useful." She turned to the older woman. "I'm not afraid of hard work, Mrs. Nathans. I want to help." Something passed between mother and son, a look of understanding, perhaps even approval. "Well then," Mrs. Nathans said after a moment, "we'll start tomorrow, but only if you feel strong enough." That night, alone in the bedroom that had temporarily become hers, Lily wept for all she had lost. But amid her grief, a tiny seed of something else had taken root, not happiness, certainly, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. She had survived, and these strangers who owed her nothing had given her shelter when she needed it most. As the weeks passed, Lily found a rhythm to her days on the Nathans ranch. She rose before dawn to help Mrs. Nathans prepare breakfast for the ranch hands, learned to manage the household accounts, and tended the kitchen garden that provided much of their produce. The physical labor was a blessing, exhausting her body enough that sleep would come despite her grief. Rhett was often away from the house, working with the cattle, mending fences, and handling the 1,000 tasks required to keep a ranch running. But he made a point to check on her each evening, sometimes bringing her small gifts: a wildflower he'd spotted on the range, a book from his modest collection, once even a length of blue ribbon he'd purchased in town because, he said awkwardly, it matched her eyes. It was after one such evening, nearly 2 months after her arrival, that Mrs. Nathans brought up the subject of Lily's future. "Have you given thought to what you might want to do, child?" the older woman asked as they sat mending by lamplight, Lily's hands stilled. "I've been trying not to think beyond each day." "That's understandable," Mrs. Nathans said, her needle flashing in the light as she continued her work. "But you're a young woman with your life ahead of you. You could go back east, perhaps. I have a sister in Philadelphia who could help you find a position as a governess or companion." The thought of leaving filled Lily with unexpected dread. "Do you want me to go?" "Heavens, no." Mrs. Nathans looked genuinely shocked. "You've become like a daughter to me these past weeks." "I just want you to know you have choices." Lily considered this. "What other choices might I have?" Mrs. Nathans hesitated. "Well, your father had filed a homestead claim, hadn't he? With proof of his death, as his daughter, you might be able to claim it yourself." But our wagon was destroyed, along with everything in it. I wouldn't have the first idea how to build a home, let alone work the land alone. No, I suppose not. Mrs. Nathan seemed to weigh her next words carefully. There's always marriage, of course. A respectable woman needs a husband out here, especially if she means to claim land. Lily felt her cheeks grow warm. I'm not sure anyone would want to marry a penniless orphan. Mrs. Nathans made a sound that might have been a laugh. Oh, I wouldn't be too sure about that. Rhett rode into town 3 times last week, and I know for a fact the general store doesn't need visiting that often. Mrs. Nathans, surely you don't think, I think my son hasn't looked at a woman the way he looks at you since Mary Fullerton broke his heart 5 years ago. The older woman set her mending aside. I'm not saying you should marry Rhett or anyone else, unless your heart tells you to. But don't discount the possibility out of some misplaced sense that you're not worthy. Lily couldn't sleep that night, Mrs. Nathans's words echoing in her mind. Had Rhett been showing her special attention? The ribbon, the wildflowers were those gestures of something more than neighborly kindness, and more troubling did she want them to be. Rhett Nathans was undeniably handsome, with his broad shoulders and kind eyes. He was a good man, hardworking and honest. Any woman would be fortunate to catch his interest. But Lily wasn't ready to think about love. Her heart was still raw with grief, her future uncertain. Yet when Rhett asked her the next day if she'd like to ride out with him to check on a new calf, Lily found herself agreeing with an eagerness that surprised her. The Nebraska summer was in full bloom as they rode across the prairie, wildflowers dotting the tall grasses with splashes of color. Rhett pointed out landmarks, a lightning-struck oak that marked the northern boundary of his property, a natural spring where the cattle gathered to drink, the distant smudge on the horizon that was the growing town of Clearwater. It's beautiful, Lily said as they stopped to rest the horses. I can see why my father wanted to bring us here. Your father had good instincts, Rhett replied, helping her down from her mount. This is fine grazing land, would have made a good start for a ranch. You think his claim is still valid? Lily asked, remembering Mrs. Nathans's suggestion. Rhett looked at her sharply. Are you thinking of claiming it? I don't know. Mrs. Nathans mentioned it might be possible. It would be a hard life for a woman alone, Rhett said, his expression troubled. Lily shrugged. I'm not afraid of hard work. It's not the work I'm concerned about. Rhett's voice took on a protective edge. The territory still has its dangers, outlaws, land disputes, even the weather, as you know all too well. I can't hide from life forever, Rhett. No, I suppose you can't. He was silent for a long moment, looking out over the rolling prairie. If you're serious about the claim, I could help you. My neighbors and we could raise a cabin for you before winter comes. The offer touched Lily deeply. You've already done so much, not nearly enough, he interrupted, turning to face her fully. Lily, whatever he had been about to say was cut short by a distant rumble. Both of them looked to the sky, where dark clouds were gathering on the western horizon. Storm's coming, Rhett said, his voice tight. We should head back. Lily felt a stab of fear at the sight of those clouds. Will it be like, no, Rhett said quickly, understanding her fear. Just a summer thunderstorm, but we should still get back before it hits. They rode hard, but the storm moved faster. The first heavy drops began to fall when they were still a mile from the ranch. By the time the house came into view, rain was falling in sheets, and lightning cracked the sky with brilliant forks. Lily was shaking by the time they reached the barn, soaked to the skin and fighting memories of the tornado that had destroyed her family. Rhett helped her dismount, his strong hands steady on her waist, then quickly led the horses into stalls. We'll wait it out here, he shouted over a crash of thunder. Too dangerous to make a run for the house now. Lily nodded, hugging herself as water dripped from her hair and clothes. The barn was solid at least, and the familiar smell of hay and horses was oddly comforting. Rhett draped a horse blanket around her shoulders. "You're trembling." "Just cold," Lily lied, not wanting to admit her fear. Another crack of thunder made her jump, and Rhett's arm went around her instinctively. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe." Lily found herself turning into his embrace, seeking the solid warmth of him against the storm-driven memories. Rhett held her close, one hand stroking her wet hair as the storm raged outside. "I keep seeing it," Lily whispered against his chest. "The tornado. My father telling me to run." "I should have stayed with them, then you'd be gone too," Rhett said, his voice rough with emotion. "And I can't bear the thought of that, Lily." She looked up at him, startled by the intensity in his voice. In the dim light of the barn, his eyes held a warmth that made her breath catch. "Rhett, I know it's too soon," he said quickly. "I know you're still grieving. But I need you to know that I'm glad you're here, Lily Vale. More glad than I have any right to be, given the circumstances that brought you to us." The honesty in his voice touched something in Lily that she'd thought had died with her family, a capacity for hope, for future happiness. "I'm glad too," she admitted softly, "even though I shouldn't be." Rhett's hand came up to cup her cheek. "There's no shame in finding light in the darkness, Lily. It's what keeps us going." The storm outside seemed to fade into the background as they stood there, caught in a moment of understanding that transcended words. Lily wasn't sure who moved first, but suddenly Rhett's lips were on hers, gentle at first, then with growing urgency as she responded to his kiss. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Rhett rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if in prayer. "I didn't mean for that to happen," he said. "Not like this. Not when you're still what? Broken, grieving." Lily placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her palm. "I'll always miss my family, Rhett, but they wouldn't want me to stop living because they're gone." Rhett opened his eyes, searching her face. "What are you saying, Lily?" "I'm saying that I don't know what happens next, but I'm not afraid to find out. Not if you're with me." The storm gradually passed, leaving behind a washed, clean world and a new understanding between them. By the time they returned to the house, walking side by side with their hands occasionally brushing, Mrs. Nathans needed only one look at their faces to hide a knowing smile. The following weeks brought changes to the rhythm of life on the Nathans ranch. Rhett began teaching Lily to ride properly, not just to sit on a horse but to work with the animal as a partner. She took to it naturally, her initial fear giving way to a growing confidence that made Rhett's chest swell with pride. "You're a natural," he told her as they rode the boundaries of his property one golden afternoon in late July. "Most city folk take months to get comfortable in the saddle." "I'm hardly city folk," Lily reminded him with a laugh. "We might not have had much in Ohio, but I've been around farm animals all my life." "Fair point," Rhett conceded with a smile. "Still, you've got a gift for it." As her confidence grew, so did Lily's curiosity about the land her father had claimed. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, she broached the subject again. "Have you ever seen the land my father staked? The homestead claim?" Rhett nodded slowly. "I rode past it about a week after we found you. It's good land. About 10 miles south of here, near the creek that feeds into the Platte River. Would you take me there?" Rhett studied her face. "Are you still thinking of claiming it?" "I don't know," Lily admitted, "but I need to see it, to understand what my father died for." The next day they rode out early, a packed lunch in Rhett's saddlebags and a sense of purpose in their journey. The summer heat was already building as they crested a rise, and Rhett reined his horse to a stop. "There," he said, pointing to a stretch of land that sloped gently toward a line of trees marking a creek bed. "That's the Vale claim." 160 acres, from that lightning-struck tree to the bend in the creek, and from the rocky outcropping there to about where that herd of antelope is grazing. Lily took in the vista, trying to see it through her father's eyes. The land was beautiful in its own way, with rich grass and the promise of water from the creek. She could understand why he had chosen it, could almost see the ranch he had envisioned rising from the prairie. "Can we go closer?" she asked. They rode down to what would have been the home site, where the ground had been partially cleared before the tornado struck. Rhett helped Lily dismount, then stood back as she walked the area, trying to feel some connection to her lost family. Near what would have been the center of the clearing, Lily stopped suddenly, kneeling to examine something half buried in the dirt. With trembling fingers, she dug it free a small metal box, its surface dented but the lock still intact. "Rhett," she called, her voice shaking. "Look at this." He knelt beside her as she tried to open the box. "Wait," he said, pulling a small knife from his boot. "Let me." With careful manipulation, the lock gave way. Inside, protected from the elements, lay several papers and a small canvas bag. Lily unfolded the first document with care. "It's the homestead claim," she whispered, eyes scanning the paper. "Signed and registered, and here's a deed to some property in Ohio that my father sold, and money." She opened the canvas bag, revealing a substantial sum in bank notes. "I don't understand, we were always so poor." "Your father was planning for your family's future," Rhett said gently. "He must have buried this for safekeeping when they made camp." Lily sat back on her heels, overwhelmed. "All this time I thought I had nothing left." "You have a choice now," Rhett said carefully. "With the claim papers and the money you could build here, start the ranch your father dreamed of. Or," Rhett's eyes met hers, "or you could go back east, start fresh somewhere else away from the memories." The thought of leaving Nebraska, of leaving Rhett, created a hollow feeling in Lily's chest. "Is that what you think I should do?" "I think," Rhett said slowly, "that what I want and what's best for you might be two different things." "And what do you want, Rhett Nathans?" For a moment he seemed unable to speak, his eyes full of emotions he couldn't voice. Then, as if coming to a decision, he took her hands in his. "I want you to stay, Lily. Not as our guest, not as Mother's helper, but as—" He paused, visibly gathering courage. "As my wife, if you'll have me." The directness of the proposal took Lily's breath away. "Rhett, we've only known each other a short time, I know that," he said quickly. "And I know it might seem too fast after everything you've been through, but out here, we don't have the luxury of long courtships. Life is too uncertain, too precious to waste time when you know what you want." His grip on her hands tightened. "And I know that I love you, Lily Vale. I think I've loved you since the moment I found you on the prairie." Tears filled Lily's eyes. "I don't want your pity, Rhett. Pity." He looked genuinely shocked. "Lily, what I feel for you is about as far from pity as a man can get. I admire your strength, your kindness, the way you've faced unimaginable loss with grace. I love the way your eyes light up when you laugh, how you hum to yourself when you think no one's listening, how you've brought life back to our home." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Lily felt something unlock in her heart, a permission to feel joy again, to look toward the future instead of being trapped in the grief of the past. "I love you too," she whispered, the words feeling both strange and perfectly right on her lips. "I didn't expect to, didn't think I could after losing everything, but I do." Rhett's face transformed with hope. "Does that mean yes?" Lily said, surprising herself with the certainty she felt. "Yes, I'll marry you, Rhett Nathans." His kiss was tender at first, then deepened with a passion that left them both breathless. When they finally broke apart, Rhett rested his forehead against hers, his voice rough with emotion. "We'll build something good together, Lily. I promise you that." I know we will, she replied, looking around at the land her father had chosen. Starting here, Rhett pulled back to study her face. Here, you want to build here, Lily nodded. This land was my father's dream, I think. I think he would want me to see it through, especially now that I have the means. She squeezed Rhett's hands. We could expand your ranch, join our lands. The smile that spread across Rhett's face was like the sun breaking through clouds. I'd like that very much. They rode back to the ranch hand in hand, their horses walking close together, the metal box secure in Lily's saddlebag. The future stretched before them like the vast Nebraska sky full of possibilities, challenges, and the promise of a love neither had expected to find. Mrs. Nathans took the news of their engagement with a mixture of joy and knowing satisfaction. Well, it's about time, she said, embracing Lily warmly. I was beginning to think my son would never work up the courage to ask you. Mother, Rhett protested, though his eyes twinkled with good humor. Oh, hush, the older woman replied. A mother knows these things. I saw how you looked at Lily from the very beginning. She turned back to Lily. Welcome to the family, my dear. Officially, that is. In my heart, you've been my daughter for weeks now. The words brought tears to Lily's eyes. Thank you, Mrs. Nathans. That means more than I can say. I think, under the circumstances, you might start calling me Mother, the older woman suggested gently. If you're comfortable with that, of course. Lily nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Rhett's arm went around her shoulders, steadying her as it had so many times before. Now, Mrs. Nathans continued briskly, we have a wedding to plan. I think September would be lovely, don't you? After the worst of the summer heat but before the fall rains. September, Rhett looked surprised. That's less than 2 months away. Is there any reason to wait? His mother challenged. Unless you're having second thoughts. No, madam, Rhett replied quickly, giving Lily's shoulder a gentle squeeze. No second thoughts at all. Lily looked up at him, seeing the certainty in his eyes. September sounds perfect. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Rhett and his ranch hands began clearing land on the Vale claim, preparing to build a cabin that would serve as a line shack until a proper house could be constructed. Lily and Mrs. Nathans traveled to Clearwater to order fabric for a wedding dress and to purchase necessary household items. The town was small but growing, with a general store, a blacksmith, a church, and a saloon. Lily noticed the curious glances as she and Mrs. Nathans made their purchases, and the older woman explained that news of their engagement had already spread. You're something of a curiosity, Mrs. Nathans said as they left the general store. The mysterious young woman Rhett Nathans rescued from the prairie, now to be his bride. People talk, especially in small towns. Does it bother you what they might be saying? Mrs. Nathans waved a dismissive hand. Let them talk. Anyone with eyes can see you and Rhett are well matched. The rest is just idle gossip. As they passed the land office, Lily hesitated. Would you mind if we stopped here? I'd like to inquire about my father's claim. The land agent, a thin man with spectacles and ink-stained fingers, examined the papers Lily presented with careful attention. These appear to be in order, Miss Vale, he said finally. Your father's claim was properly registered. As his surviving heir, you have the right to assume ownership, provided you can demonstrate intent to improve the land as required by the Homestead Act. My fiancé and I are already building there, Lily explained. We plan to expand his cattle operation to include my father's land. The agent nodded approvingly. That would certainly qualify. He pulled out a form and began filling it in. I'll need you to sign here, acknowledging your inheritance of the claim and your intent to fulfill its obligations. As Lily signed her name, a sense of rightness settled over her. This was what her father would have wanted, his dream continuing through her, the land he had chosen becoming part of her future. On their way back to the ranch, they stopped at the Vale graves. Mrs. Nathans tactfully remained with the wagon while Lily knelt beside the 3 wooden crosses Rhett had made. "I wish you could be here," she said softly, touching each name in turn. "I think you would have liked Rhett, Father. He's good and strong like you. And Mother, you would love his mother. She reminds me of you sometimes." Her voice broke as she touched her brother's cross. "And Sam, I miss you every day, little brother." A breeze stirred the prairie grasses around the graves, carrying the scent of wildflowers. Lily took it as a sign of approval from those she had lost, a blessing on the new life she was building from the ashes of tragedy. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the September sky a perfect blue that matched Rhett's eyes. Lily stood in her room at the Nathans' house, looking at herself in the small mirror as Mrs. Nathans adjusted the simple veil in her hair. The dress they had made was ivory muslin, adorned with lace that Mrs. Nathans had been saving for years. Around her neck hung her mother's silver locket, polished to a high shine, containing a tiny scrap of fabric from her mother's own wedding dress that had miraculously survived in the family Bible. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Nathans said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Absolutely beautiful." "I'm nervous," Lily admitted. "That's natural, dear." The older woman squeezed her shoulders gently. "Marriage is a big step, but I've never seen 2 people better suited for each other than you and my son." A knock at the door announced Pastor Willoughby's arrival. The ceremony would be held in the Nathans' front parlor, with only a small gathering of neighboring ranchers and their families as witnesses. "It's time," Mrs. Nathans said, giving Lily's hands one last encouraging squeeze before going to take her place. Walking into the parlor, Lily felt a moment of sharp grief that her father wasn't there to give her away. But then she saw Rhett waiting for her by the fireplace, his expression transforming from nervous anticipation to awe as he caught sight of her. In that moment, past and future seemed to merge, the love she had lost and the love she had found becoming part of the same tapestry. Pastor Willoughby's words washed over her as she and Rhett joined hands, their fingers intertwining as naturally as if they had been doing so all their lives. When the time came to speak her vows, Lily's voice was clear and steady, filled with a certainty that surprised even her. "I, Lily Vale, take you, Rhett Nathans, to be my lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part." Rhett's voice was rough with emotion as he repeated the same promise. When he slid the simple gold band onto her finger purchased with money from the sale of cattle, he had proudly told her Lily felt the last pieces of her broken heart mending, forming something new and stronger than before. "By the power vested in me," Pastor Willoughby concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Rhett's kiss was gentle yet possessive, a promise of the life they would build together. When they turned to face their small audience, the applause and cheers brought a blush to Lily's cheeks but a beaming smile to her face. The celebration that followed was simple but joyful, with food prepared by Mrs. Nathans and the neighboring women, music provided by a ranch hand who played the fiddle, and enough goodwill to fill the house to bursting. As the sun began to set, Rhett took Lily's hand and led her outside for a moment of quiet. "Happy, Mrs. Nathans?" he asked, his arm around her waist as they watched the sky turn gold and crimson. The new name sent a thrill through Lily. "Very happy, Mr. Nathans," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Though it still doesn't seem quite real." "It's real," Rhett assured her, pressing a kiss to her temple. "And it's just the beginning." After the guests departed, Rhett surprised Lily by lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold of the small cabin they had built on the Vale claim. It wasn't finished, yet the interior walls still needed plaster, and many comforts were missing, but it was sturdy and warm, with a bed piled high with quilts Mrs. Nathans had made as a wedding gift. "It's not much," Rhett said apologetically, setting Lily on her feet. "Not yet. But by spring, we'll have a proper house started." "It's perfect," Lily told him sincerely, looking around at the simple space that was now their home. "It's ours." Their wedding night was a discovery of each other, tender and passionate by turns. Rhett's gentle strength made Lily feel both protected and desired, while her own awakening passion surprised and delighted them both. In the afterglow, wrapped in each other's arms beneath the quilts, they whispered dreams for their future until sleep claimed them. The first year of marriage brought challenges and joys in equal measure. Winter descended early, with blizzards that sometimes trapped them in their cabin for days at a time. But those enforced periods of solitude allowed Rhett and Lily to deepen their bond, learning the rhythms of living together as husband and wife. Spring brought the busy season of calving, with Lily proving herself as capable as any ranch hand. She learned to rope and brand alongside Rhett, her initial squeamishness giving way to practical skill. The small garden she planted near their cabin thrived under her care, providing fresh vegetables to supplement their meals. By summer, construction had begun on a larger, permanent house near where their cabin stood. Using lumber hauled from the sawmill in Clearwater and stones gathered from the creek bed, Rhett and his men built a solid 2-story home that would withstand the prairie winters and provide room for the family they hoped to have. Mrs. Nathans visited often, bringing furnishings from the main ranch house and advice on everything from canning preserves to managing a household budget. Though she maintained her own home, she spoke increasingly of possibly moving to the new house once it was complete. "That big ranch house is too much for just me," she explained when Rhett and Lily expressed surprise at the idea. "And when you start having children, you'll need an extra pair of hands." The mention of children brought a wistful expression to Lily's face. They had been trying since their wedding night, but so far there had been no sign of a baby. "It will happen when it's meant to," Mrs. Nathans assured her, noticing her expression. "Some things can't be rushed." In late summer, as the new house neared completion, Lily finally missed her monthly courses. The town's doctor confirmed what she had begun to suspect: a baby would arrive in early spring. When she told Rhett, his whoop of joy could probably be heard all the way to Clearwater. He lifted her off her feet and spun her in a circle, then set her down hastily, suddenly concerned. "Should I be doing that? Is it safe for the baby?" Lily laughed, pressing his hand to her still flat abdomen. "The doctor says I'm healthy as a horse. We just need to be a bit more careful as time goes on." Rhett's face grew serious as he held his hand against her belly, as if trying to feel the tiny life growing within. "I'm going to be a father," he said, the wonder in his voice making Lily's heart swell with love. "You're going to be a wonderful father," she assured him. The autumn cattle drive to the railhead in Omaha was a tense time, with Rhett torn between the need to oversee the sale of their herd and his reluctance to leave Lily, now beginning to show her pregnancy. In the end, they compromised Lily would stay with Mrs. Nathans at the main ranch house while Rhett was away, ensuring she wasn't alone in case of emergency. The 6 weeks of separation were the longest they had been apart since their wedding. Lily filled her days helping Mrs. Nathans prepare for winter and supervising the final details of their new house, determined that it would be ready to welcome Rhett home when he finally returned, bringing news of a successful sale and pockets full of cash to see them through the winter. The reunion was sweet beyond words. That night, as they lay together in their new bedroom for the first time, Lily guided Rhett's hand to her rounded belly just in time to feel a distinct kick. "Was that?" Rhett began, his eyes wide with amazement. "Your son or daughter saying hello," Lily confirmed, smiling at his expression of wonder. "Hello there, little one," Rhett said softly, bending to speak directly to Lily's belly. "Your mama and I can't wait to meet you." Winter settled over the prairie, blanketing the land in white. The new house proved as warm and solid as Rhett had promised, with a large stone fireplace that kept the worst of the cold at bay. As Christmas approached, Lily found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this point. "A year and a half ago, I had no idea any of this would happen," she told Rhett one evening as they sat by the fire. "I couldn't have imagined losing everyone I loved or finding you or building all this." Rhett took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Do you ever regret it?" "Coming west, I mean." Lily considered the question seriously. "I regret the loss, the pain. I'll always miss my family." She placed her free hand on her swollen belly, feeling the active movements of their child. "But I can't regret where I am now, who I'm with. This is where I belong, Rhett." "With you." His kiss was tender, a silent acknowledgement of all they had shared and all that lay ahead. The baby arrived on a clear, cold day in early March, a daughter with Rhett's blue eyes and a dusting of Lily's auburn hair. After a difficult but ultimately successful labor, attended by Mrs. Nathans and a midwife from town, Lily held her daughter to her breast for the first time, overwhelmed by the rush of love. "She's perfect," Rhett whispered, perched on the edge of the bed, his finger caught in the baby's tiny grip. "What shall we name her?" Lily looked down at the tiny face, seeing echoes of her mother and her own features mingled with Rhett's. "Martha," she said softly. "After my mother, Martha Hope Nathans." "Hope," Rhett repeated, testing the name. "It suits her. She is our hope, isn't she?" Lily said, meeting her husband's gaze. "The future we're building together." Rhett leaned in to kiss her forehead, then the baby's. "The first of many hopes, God willing." As spring returned to the prairie, bringing new grass for the cattle and fresh growth to Lily's expanded garden, the Vale Nathans ranch began to take on the character of an established homestead. A barn rose near the house, corrals were built for breaking horses, and the herd of cattle grew with the addition of new breeding stock Rhett purchased with the proceeds from their first joint cattle drive. Martha Hope thrived, growing from a newborn to a sturdy infant with remarkable speed. Her arrival had cemented Mrs. Nathans's decision to move permanently to the new house, where she occupied a comfortable bedroom on the ground floor and reveled in her role as grandmother. "This is what I always wanted for Rhett," she confided to Lily one afternoon as they watched him playing with Martha on a blanket in the yard, making the baby giggle with silly faces. "A true partner, a family of his own." "It's what I want for him too," Lily replied, her heart full as she watched the man she loved with their daughter. "For all of us." As Martha's first birthday approached, bringing with it the second anniversary of the tornado that had changed Lily's life forever, she suggested to Rhett that they make a pilgrimage to her family's graves. "I want Martha to know about them," she explained. "Even though she'll never meet them, they're part of who she is." On a mild March day, they rode to the graves, Martha securely strapped to Lily's chest in a carrying cloth. Rhett had maintained the crosses, ensuring they remained upright and visible, a testament to the lives that had been lost and the connections that remained. Lily knelt carefully, balancing Martha, and touched each cross in turn. "This is your grandfather, Thomas," she told the baby, who watched with solemn eyes. "He was brave and hardworking, just like your daddy. And this is your grandmother, Martha, who you're named for." She was kind and strong, and she made the best apple pie in Ohio. Her voice caught as she touched the smallest cross. And this was your Uncle Samuel. He was only 12 when he died, but he was smart as a whip and could make anyone laugh. Martha reached out a chubby hand toward the crosses, babbling in her baby language as if in greeting. They would have loved you so much, Lily continued, tears slipping down her cheeks. Just as we do. Rhett knelt beside her, his arm around her shoulders. They're proud of you, Lily. Wherever they are, they're watching over us. Lily leaned into his strength, grateful beyond words for the shelter he had built, not just the physical home they shared, but the emotional refuge of his love, the future they were creating together. I believe that, she said softly. I have to. As they rode back to their ranch, with the spring sun warming their backs and their daughter contentedly nestled against Lily's heart, she looked out over the land that had taken so much from her and given her so much in return. The cycle of loss and renewal, of endings and beginnings, was written in every blade of prairie grass, every turn of the seasons. Rhett reached across to take her hand, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. What are you thinking about, Mrs. Nathans? Lily smiled, the expression no longer shadowed by grief as it once had been. I'm thinking about storms, she said. How they destroy and clear away, but also how they make space for new growth. Rhett nodded, understanding as he always did. Like the prairie fires. Devastating when they happen, but necessary for renewal. Exactly. Lily looked down at Martha, then back to her husband. The storm took my first family, but it also led me to you, to our family. I wouldn't have chosen that path, but here we are, Rhett finished for her. And I thank God every day for bringing you to me, even through such sorrow. As their ranch came into view, with the house Rhett had built standing solid against the prairie sky, Lily felt a profound sense of completion. She had lost everything once, only to find a love and purpose stronger than she could have imagined. The shelter Rhett had built for her had become a home for them both, and the future they had created together stretched before them like the endless Nebraska sky, full of promise, challenge, and enduring love. Yes, she agreed, squeezing his hand. Here we are, home.